Hello, and welcome to Self-Care is Sexy. My name is Chris, and I'll be your host. We're a podcast that's here to generate and share self-care ideas with each other. Last week was all about lush, positive self-talk, and not just foo-foo affirmations that you repeat over and over to a mirror, but like actual real tips and hacks on how to make self-talk work for you and change the way that you're thinking about yourself to help you get the self-care that you need. If you missed that show or want to catch up on any past episodes, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Stitcher, Podbean, PodNation, Alexa Music, and anywhere else you get your podcasts from. I want to give you a quick preview of what to expect from today's show. So today, I want to talk about prioritizing self-care. It's something that we all need to be doing, but there are some difficulties when it comes to trying to rearrange life to make self-care the top of the list. So I'm giving out some really good tips on how to make self-care the priority. We're going to be talking about what to expect when you do start making self-care your priority, as well as sharing the truth that not a lot of people want to say out loud, but that there is a downside to taking care of yourself first. But I want to share this with you because it's super important that I keep it real with you and that I let you know the true expectations to have when it comes to making self-care your priority. We're going to get to all that in just a moment, but first, a few quick housekeeping notes. Okay, welcome back. Self-care is sexy. It looks so good when somebody is making themselves a priority, when they really speak highly of themselves, when they set boundaries, and it's plain attractive to see when a person makes what's important to them the most important thing. But what happens when we're taking care of ourselves, what if that starts to conflict with other priorities? How do you decide what gets ditched? And how do you know if you're really making self-care the priority or just the performative act of looking like you're making self-care the priority? Which is totally a thing, by the way, and it happens to the best of us. You may, if you're a little ways down on your journey, you may find yourself falling into that. Don't you worry. You can always go to my website, www.selfcareissexy.com, and I have an entire podcast all about performative self-care. Okay, so let's get right to the nitty-gritty because I got a lot of stuff to share with you today, but I really want to start with the top 5 ways that you can prioritize self-care. Number 1, you're going to pick yourself over others. I know it sounds super basic, but it is a choice. It's a choice to choose yourself. And the reality that a lot of us don't really know or really understand is that you deserve your own love, your own time, and your own energy. But most of us don't really get that because we've kind of misplaced this idea that caring more for others than you do yourself is like a good thing, but it's actually very, very toxic. So I'm sort of touching on a little bit of martyrism, right? Where you've put all of your self-worth in doing for other people, in helping other people. And you think it's super helpful. You think you're being great to other people, but it's really not. When you start putting other people before yourself, you are training your brain to think that you are less than. And you're putting that rut groove of belief in your head that everybody else deserves more of your time, your energy, your love, your attention than you do. And that, my friends, is really, really just a difficult place to be in. You want to pick yourself over other people by finding things to love about yourself. And I don't just mean oh, I love my outfit today. I mean really diving deeper into what it is that makes you uniquely you, that you love about yourself. And another thing I'd mention when you're picking yourself over others is that it's okay to cut things out, to cut people off, to get rid of the baggage. Because if you've got a lot of priorities and it's hard to pick which one is first, you better believe you're going to get rid of some shit so that you can be the priority. Number 2, you're going to decide that you are right. Now, this is a difficult concept. A lot of my newbies struggle with this, and I'm here to just tell you, fake it till you make it, my friends. Just decide that you're right, that your voice matters, and that you're making the right decisions all of the time, especially when it comes to picking yourself over other people. When you've got a stack of priorities and one is getting Junior to, school and picking up little Susie from the playground, or taking your spouse's laundry to the dry cleaners, or doing the laundry, or meal prepping, or any of the multiple priorities that you have in your life, you've got to remember that you matter and you are important, and you are making the right decision to say, no, I can't do that. Decide that when you make the decision to put yourself first, even if it's uncomfortable, that you're making the right decision. I know it seems a little weird, but if you're having a hard time really believing in yourself and believing that you're on the right side of the decision to put yourself first, check in with your body and really feel the response in your body. So when you've got that laundry list of priorities to do today, and you're just thinking, oh my God, I'm not going to get time for my run, my walk, my pedicure, my nap, whatever it might be, read my book, whatever your self-care is, if you're looking at your list of things and you're like, I'm not going to get that in, decide that you are right in making yourself a priority and ditch one of the other things. And then check in with your body, and if you're feeling anxious about it, just work through that and just make that definitive decision that you're making the right choice. Number 3, you're gonna create or embrace your routine. Now, again, these are my top 5 ways to prioritize self-care, and I can't stress this enough. Routine, although it might seem boring, it gives you choices. It really does, and it might feel like work, but there's a huge payoff to routines. And it does kind of feel restrictive at first if you're not used to being on a routine. But my friends, what it does is it gives you time. It gives you choice and it gives you time. And how it does that is it kind of thinks for you. Like if you go to bed at the same time every day, if you get up at the same time every day, if you have your baseline, we've talked about this in several past episodes, if you have your baseline of self-care, the things that you absolutely will do every day, and you follow that routine, it gives you the choice to decide, okay, above and beyond that, what do I want to do today? What has to get done? What is the priority? And having a routine actually gives you more time because it puts a lot of shit on autopilot. So you're not using your brain power to try and think of oh crap, what do I have next? Where am I supposed to be now? What am I supposed to be doing now? And it actually does really help you with that, decision fatigue and even decision paralysis. If you've ever experienced either of those things, either decision fatigue where you've just spent all day making all the decisions and by the end of your day, you're just like, I don't know, somebody else decide. Or the decision paralysis where you have a ton of options and it seems overwhelming, so you just can't pick any of them. A routine, a consistent routine, will solve that problem in an instant. And it'll help you prioritize self-care. And number 4, this brings me to number 4, which is your baseline. I preach this all the time, but it's fundamental in all aspects of self-care. And I really want you to get this. Having a baseline of self-care tasks that you will do no matter what's going on, no matter how shitty your life is or how unpredictable it is, having a baseline really gives you that certainty, that foundation. Now, I've talked about it before. I use what's called the Habit app, and this is a really good tool to indicate to you when self-care has no longer become the priority. So for my longtime listeners who are rocking their self-care journey and really on board with putting themselves first, with setting boundaries, with saying no, and have their baseline in place that they will do these 4 or 5 things every day, no matter what, for themselves because they decided they are their priority, this tracking habit app really helps you see the bigger picture of, Are you making yourself a priority? Where are you having some struggles? That way you can start deciding what actions you might want to take. Because that baseline, it just gives you a foundation of, these are the things that you will not negotiate on. You will get your water in. You will get your activity in. You will do your journaling or your self-reflection. You will listen to that podcast. You will take 5 minutes for a nap or whatever it might be. But having that baseline, it gives you that certainty of A of all, you are doing self-care, which a lot of times in our journeys, we forget that we're doing if we're not keeping track. And B of all, it gives you kind of that dopamine hit of a checklist that hey, I did the thing today. And last but not least, in my 5 ways to prioritize self-care, you want to have a checkpoint, Charlie. This is so important. Now, if you've ever run the Portland Marathon, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Before you get up on mile 17, the St. John Bridge, there is a place they have called Checkpoint Charlie, where if you don't have a bib, you do not pass. And I want you to create something similar in your own life by having a checkpoint on your self-care. It's a checkpoint that you cannot go any further until you check in and make sure that you haven't forgotten that self-care is important to you. And these Checkpoint Charlies can be set up in a myriad of ways. You can do like I do and put a reminder in your phone that just says Checkpoint Charlie. And I know that day when that comes up once a month, that I sit down and I reflect and I journal and I look back and I look at my habit tracker app and I look to see have I been making self-care a priority? I look at my overall mood. Have I been in a good mood? Have I been in a bad mood? Is that because I'm not getting my self-care? And then I've made a pact with myself that at that point, whatever, interval you want to set it at, but at that point, I'm going to reset what my self-care means to me. Because friends, we are changing at the speed of light. And you definitely, what was self-care last month might not be self-care this month. You've got to learn to adjust on the fly. And the best way to do that is to set up these Checkpoint Charlies in your life. Now, I want to run over that list real quick. My 5 top ways to prioritize self-care. Number 1, pick yourself over others. Number 2, decide that you are right. Number 3, either create or embrace your routine. Number 4, have a baseline. And number 5, Checkpoint Charlie. Make sure you got one set up. All right, now that we've got the top 5 ways to prioritize self-care, now we're kind of going to the next level. And if you're new to my podcast, by the way, welcome. I'm Chris. Yeah, welcome on the crazy train. Good luck. Strap in. Hold on. Here we go. The next set of 5 things that I want to share with you are the 5 things to keep in mind when you're prioritizing self-care. Now, I came up with this list because I really feel like the people who have been doing self-care consistently kind of forget this. And the people who are new to self-care, they're new to making themselves a priority. They kind of need sort of a what to expect, right, when you're making this shift. Because ironically, if you go from a lifestyle of constantly people-pleasing, of doing everything for everyone else, of not taking care of yourself, of having monstrous, shitty thoughts about yourself all the time, if you're coming from that and you're making the shift, there's some things that you want to keep in mind so that it's not so uncomfortably awkward that you just give up and go back to your old ways of running ragged and doing everything for everyone else. So 5 things to keep in mind when you're prioritizing self-care. Number 1, it feels weird at first. I'm not going to lie, putting our self-care first, it feels selfish. It's like we feel like we're letting other people down. But what we're doing is we're showing people, 1, we can change. We can change our behavior. And 2, that self-care is not selfish, that it's actually a good thing. Hearing others talk themselves up or talk about themselves, it sounds selfish at first. When we hear other people doing it, we're like, ooh, girl, who's braggadocious McGee over there, But once you really start to get into self-care and you really make it a priority, that will change. So it's going to feel weird at first. It's going to feel a little off. You're going to notice that when you're saying no to other people and to obligations, you're going to tense up. It's going to feel like, oh my God, I'm doing something wrong. And that's 100% natural. But just remember that when you're saying no to something or to someone or some obligation, you're literally saying yes to the thing that is your priority right now, which is taking care of yourself. And when you take care of yourself, you become a self-sufficient, emotional regulating machine that doesn't need other people to do it for you. So you actually are helping other people because you're gonna let go of that dependency of craving other people's affirmation of you and craving outside validation. So yeah, putting yourself first and making that switch, it does feel weird. I'm not going to lie, it's a little awkward, but it's 100% normal. And if you just sit in the suck, you're going to find it's really a game changer when you do put self-care as the priority. Number 2, keep in mind that when you make self-care the priority, that you've let yourself go. And I don't mean like moo-moos and unbrushed hair. I mean that you've let other things that you're doing become more important than taking care of yourself. And there is real power in reconnecting to yourself. Like, newsflash, you miss you. If you've found this podcast, however you stumbled upon this greatness that is Self-Care is Sexy, you made a decision. Your conscious brain said, look, we got to get our shit together. We have not been taking care of ourselves. How do I do that? How do I get back on track? And the reason it feels so weird and is so foreign and something that you want to keep in mind is that self-care is going to feel really challenging at first because you haven't been taking care of yourself. You've been really dumping all over yourself, and you've been taking on way too much of other people's bullshit, and you've convinced yourself that their bullshit is more important than your real shit. So you've let yourself go a little bit. And we want self-care to help bring you back to your center, bring you back. We're tethering you back into you. Because really, you don't need me or this podcast or really anyone to tell you that it's okay for you to make you important to you. I don't know how many more times I can say you in one sentence without sounding like a crazy person, but I hope you get the point. Number 3, keep in mind that it's gonna get real quiet around here. Now, this is something, again, for my newbies, I don't think you realize, but be prepared for that really awkward phase where all of a sudden you're not Captain Save-'em. You're just not Captain Save-'em. And there's nothing that has to be done. And you're gonna have to learn how to fight the urge to fill up that space that you've made with other people's shit. I know this about people who are making that switch from people-pleasing to self-care, that there is dead space a lot of the time. Because when you start getting good at setting boundaries and you start thinking about what's important to you, you definitely have a lot more free time. And again, your first reaction is like, "Ooh, what can I do for somebody else today?" And you're going to have to really fight that urge and instead fill that time with what's best for you. What do you need? And if you don't know, Jesus on a stick, listen to any of my past episodes with idea after idea after idea of what are some good things you can do for self-care. But the main point with number 3 is that I want you to understand that it's going to get a little lonely. It's going to get a little quiet. You're going to feel the urge to say yes to the first invite you get after taking some time for yourself and not having plans on your calendar. And I want you to resist that because you're gonna really see the benefits after you have been quiet for a minute and you've let that time build up, the time of just being with yourself. And you know, if you listen to the show for any length of time, I talk about this all the time. If you have a hard time being alone and being by yourself, boy, howdy, do you need self-care real, real bad. Number 4, you want to keep in mind when you're first making self-care the priority to keep track of your self-care. Now, this is what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about how we prioritize self-care. At first, when you really start prioritizing your self-care, you might feel like, I'm doing all the self-care. You might feel like, wow, I took a nap, I read my book, I drank my water, I am a fucking self-care badass, woo! And hell yeah, celebrate yourself. But unless you're keeping track somewhere, either on the app or the journal or, tick marks on a sticky note, whatever, your brain will lie to you. It's going to lie to you a lot, and it's going to tell you that you are doing all the self-care. When the truth is, hear me, folks, the truth is you probably did one thing 3 weeks ago for actual self-care, and the rest has just been tasking. You're just doing shit. So you need to keep track of the self-care that you're doing. Not because, if you know me, I'm all about lists, but not just because I'm all about lists. It's because your brain is a big fucking liar. Your brain lies to you all the time. It lies to you 20 million times a day. So unless you're keeping track of the self-care that you're doing, your brain is going to lie and make it seem like you're doing more than you are, when the truth is, like I said, you probably did one thing. And your brain's like, yeah, I'm a self-care badass. No, honey. No, you ain't. You did one thing and you've got 20-some years worth of backlog. So get to getting, all right? And last but not least, on my 5 things to keep in mind when you're making self-care the priority, number 5, prepare to meet the new you. All right, for my newbies out there, you actually need to prepare yourself to meet the new version of yourself. Because after you do self-care consistently, you make it the priority in life. Even if you don't know how, you just make the choice like, hey, I need to focus on me and what I want. You are absolutely going to change. And it's going to happen no matter what. And the version of you that you're going to meet might be quite different from the current version of you, and that's okay. This new version of you is the version that listens to its gut intuition. This new version doesn't give 100% at work every day because it knows it needs some reserve. This new version takes a nap when they're tired. The new version cuts out toxic people, okay? And when you start seeing the new version of yourself, gonna be a little jarring. And my best advice to you on that is that as you're changing, if you can just remember the initial reason why you wanted to make self-care the priority in the first place, meeting this new version of you will become a positive thing. You will start to celebrate it. It's so important that you remember that what you're actually doing by making self-care the priority is you are changing. You are becoming a better person. You are becoming the best version of you and living your best life because you are finally taking yourself off the teat of being dependent on outside validation for your happiness and for your well-being. You're taking the reins. You are the captain of this ship now. And that's what self-care can do. It can give you so much freedom from the dependency on the outside world for your emotional regulation. All right, friends, I'm going to run through that list one more time. 5 things to keep in mind when prioritizing self-care. Number 1, feels weird at first. Number 2, you've let yourself go. You got to reconnect. Number 3, it's going to get real quiet around here. Number 4, you got to track your self-care. And number 5, be prepared to meet the new you. Okay, again, those are the 5 things to keep in mind when we're making self-care the priority. Now, I did say at the beginning of the episode that there was actually a downside to prioritizing self-care, and I wasn't lying, okay? There's absolutely a downside to making self-care the priority. I'm going to cut through the bullshit. I'm going to give you the Chris notes, and I'm going to let you know. You are going to experience a feeling of loss and disappointment because your life is about to change in so many ways. You're going to lose friends. You're going to cut out a lot of things that you've been a part of for a long time. You're going to disappoint some people. And people around you may act react adversely to this change because they're so used to you doing things for them. So all I can tell you in that is that there's a ton of relief and freedom when you return to your center, and all the painful disappointment and the loss and the change, while uncomfortable, isn't bad. It's just new. And the reality is you got to choose your suck. Are you going to choose the suck of running yourself ragged and people pleasing and doing everything for everyone else? Or are you going to choose the suck of making self-care the priority, putting yourself first, making what you want the top thing on your list, and suffering some loss and some disappointment and some major change? You got to choose your suck. Now, I'm advocating for self-care as the suck you choose because I know, having gone through it, at the end, the reward is so much better. And that the new you and the new life that you get as a result is so much more authentic and so much more centering. And believe me, you become rock solid. No one can shake your foundation. And there is such a sense of control and freedom in that. I would choose to go through that suck 100 times over if I have to. Which, surprise, flash note, you will. You go through it over and over again as you evolve in your self-care journey. And all of that is to really prepare you for the reality of what changes from going from a people-pleasing doormat to a badass boss bitch who makes self-care the priority. All right, that's it for this week. Thank you for joining me. If you have a story you'd like to share and you want to be on the show, please email me. It's Kris, Kris, at selfcareissexy.com. Okay, we've got some really great content coming your way, so stay tuned. And remember that self-care is sexy. We're giving you permission to put yourself first.